Okay. Well, I want to thank you all for sticking around all the way toward the end of the presentation. I'm the last before the last. I'm Zahra Teshnizi, and I work at UBC. I'm a research manager, and my current role does more with sustainability and energy efficiency than materials, but I'll tell you how I got here and how I'm related to this topic. My presentation is mostly about the effort of City of Vancouver for preserving old growth wood forests in old homes. And the first picture I just put here, I want to point out, that's the picture I just took from a renovation slash deconstruction demolition site. And it was like a pile of wood, and I just went and looked at this piece of wood, and I saw this section that is beautiful, but you don't see it when you look at that whole pile of dirty wood. So the reason we want to keep this wood is that these are our old forests that stands in our houses, and when they are gone, they are gone. So I guess I'm not originally from that region, but I share that feeling of these are so valuable to be lost in the pace of our current lifestyle. So how I came here, I'm actually from Iran, and I studied architecture in University of Tehran, and our school has a very artistic approach to architecture. So sustainability and environment, although there is this energy focus on it, but not sustainability in the whole vision. So as I was doing my undergrad, I was taking this structural detail course, and our prof would encourage us to go to construction sites to learn how these details work, to not just look at the 2D drawings. So I was just so curious to go and look into any construction site I see, and this was in my neighborhood, a demolition site, and I looked at this building and saw all the pieces of building just like torn apart and piled on each other, and as I kept going back to this site, I just realized they're just piling it and taking it away. So I became curious what's happening when the building reaches its end of life, and that led me to some studies that I ended up doing some publication, but I did two approaches, one in the local Iran region on, well, are we recycling, are we reusing, if not, why not? And the situation there is quite upsetting because we do have lots of construction. The buildings have quite a short lifetime, especially the modern buildings, not our old buildings that are standing there for 600-700 years old, but our recent buildings. And then there's not much of recycling other than metal things that they are found valuable. So it kind of gets me going in understanding how do we value materials and how do we look at them. Maybe we are not showing that value as much, and maybe that's why, because we are not quantifying it, we are not noticing what we are doing. So I came to UBC to do my graduate studies in architecture and looking at the same idea of how are we valuing materials and how are we valuing it through the whole life cycle of the material. I started working with Dr. Ray Cole. I'm sure some of you know him. He has a long work history in sustainability. And when I got there, the first thing he told me was that reuse and recycling is the thing of the past. We have studied it and we know all about it. So let's talk something new. So my approach kind of shifted from looking at reuse and salvaging into looking at, if we know all of these things and we know how to do it, then why are we not doing it? So looking at more of all the stakeholders that are throughout the whole life cycle of building involved, and what are they looking at, what are their priorities, do they care or not care? So that's the topic of my thesis. I'm not gonna go there because that's not the focus of this talk. But as I was doing my thesis, I kept going to the demolition sites around the city, and I would see that yes, we do recycle, we separate wood from concrete, from metal, from plastic, and we definitely recycle concrete. Sometimes we recycle wood, but recycling is definitely the one before the last preferred approach, which is sending it to landfill. And I started also working with UBC sustainability group and their planning department, because I also realized that although we are doing pretty good in larger construction and demolition sites, which mainly work with concrete, we are not doing as well in smaller site, renovation site, and homes, because the sites are small, the contractors are maybe not as, they might not have as much of facility as a larger construction project, and this in renovation sites, for example, the amount of waste is so small. Like, I interviewed a lot of these contractors, and what they tell me is like, what do you expect from me? Separate them, unpile, and go unload them one by one. It takes me more money to just pay that truck to unload these one by one. So it comes with those limitations on the site work. So it was kind of fascinating for me to open my eyes about, well, we know how to do it, why are we not doing it? And as I was going through this work with UBC operations staff, I got to know the municipalities in the region. So I got involved in some of the meetings at the time, 2013. So you can see some of these policy and plans that are put together to basically help toward making the region more sustainable, and some of them definitely help the waste, and construction and demolition waste is a big part of it. So the first one on top is our regional Metro Vancouver integrated solid waste management plan, in which they are looking at construction and demolition waste as a big part. And around the same time, City of Vancouver came with its Greener City Action Plan. As part of it, they had waste, and construction and demolition waste was a big part of it. And the region knew that construction and demolition waste that goes to landfill, 90% of it is demolition waste. And from that 90%, 60% of it is wood that goes to the landfill. So it became very clear very soon that we need to focus on wood, given that this wood is also valuable. The other thing I want to point is that you can see there are lots of plans that come together. We also have the City of Vancouver Heritage Action Plan, which also refers to the Greener City Action Plan. And then you can see the latest one, Zero Waste Plan, which is supposed to make City of Vancouver zero waste by 2040. So all of these are setting aspirational goals, but they know that demolition waste is a big part of it to be able to hit it. Metro Vancouver at the time, you can see around 2013, came up with a sample demolition bylaw, which it was pretty good timing for the City of Vancouver, and they basically used that sample bylaw to develop their own green demolition bylaw, which came to become active in 2014. As part of this bylaw, City of Vancouver requires 75% diversion from pre-1940 homes, which is basically where most of the wood is coming from. And then 90% diversion from houses with character status. These are the houses that are not registered heritage, but they are identified as having character, and there is interest in preserving them. So after 4 years of having this bylaw active, there are good outcomes coming from it. So they have been diverting 40,000 tons of waste from around 1,000 homes. There's a good compliance rate. 98% of the demolition homes are able to meet that, and the average for these homes are 86%, and it's quite higher than what would have been otherwise achieved, which is 50%, which was because the wood wouldn't fully been recycled. However, the biggest challenge and surprise for the city was that they expected by putting, for example, 90% diversion rate, they're going to get wood salvage out of it, but that didn't happen. The contractors were so busy, and what they cared about is to clean the site as fast as they can. There are so high, so much pressure on them. So this really didn't lead in much salvage. And I guess some of you know that situation in the City of Vancouver with affordability of housing and the price of a land that is $1,500,000, people do not put high value when they want to do a development. Other than that, I'm not going to focus on the recycling bit. There are some challenge with recycling, but I'm going to focus more on the salvaging part. So it was around this time that I actually got involved with the city as a research intern. They have this program, they call it Greener City Scholar. So the graduate students of UBC joined to help them with some specific challenges they have. So I was tasked with understanding what are the both regulatory and other sort of barriers for salvaging this wood, and what are the opportunities. On the side of advantages, we all know the environmental benefits, also the heritage aspect of that wood, the local job opportunities, and other than, in addition to that, it's the value of that wood. That wood is from old growth forest. It has definitely a higher quality than the lumber that we find in the market right now. It's denser, it's finer grain. It sometimes even acts like hardwood. So if you give that to some people who understand the value, they can do a lot with it. However, in terms of the challenges, I mean, I guess this has been talked through the first session, especially the labor cost in Vancouver, well, is quite high. I'm sure it's similar all around. So the amount of work that is put to this wood to make it possible to go back to the market, make the price about 10 times higher. So that very easily dismissed the use for a common lumber use for that wood. And then the quantities are small. So we did a quick estimate of this amount, and what we found was that the amount of wood in these houses, pre-1940 homes, the lumber, is about 10% of the wood that is used every year for new homes in Vancouver. So the supply is not that much to be used for typical use. And then there's an underdeveloped market. But what I'm saying underdeveloped is not on the demand side, it's more on the supply side. Because there are interests for more high value added work on these pieces of wood, but because the supply is so unclear and unknown, nobody really counts on them on anything because it's so rare to have access to it. And then at the time, city had an interest in looking at these materials structurally to be reused again for structural purposes as they were being used in those houses. However, currently, and I think some of you may know, there is no regrading system for old salvage wood. So if they want to use that wood, they have to have an engineer to regrade it, and that will cost again a lot. And that's based, and I actually had some conversation with regrading organization in the region, and they stated a lot of interest in doing such a thing if it comes to become a more serious conversation. But I think city kind of felt with the smaller quantity, they weren't sure if it's actually the right use of that material. So basically, we looked at other potential uses that are more value added. So it can be used as the interior for all the millwork and fixture. It can be used for craft furniture, some yard and landscape use. And if one day the market becomes so advanced that we have so much of it, more than using it decoratively, we can definitely use it for non-structural and non-decorative use, like the back fillers and all. But for the time, the value of that doesn't make that very meaningful. So basically, my research ended with some recommendations, both for the contractor side and also for the municipality, which I'm talking only about the municipality side. City of Vancouver has always done it. When they want to show leadership, they try to show it by example. So one obvious suggestion is that they should have salvaging requirements and reusing in their own buildings if they want to require it from the industry. And then also there is this lack of information about where this material is going to become available. So it seems quite obvious that there is a need for a platform. If a building going to be demolished, people who are interested in that should know that availability to be having the chance to even go negotiate it. And that such a thing doesn't exist. Lots of it goes through Craigslist and so many informal platforms. The other thing is that, well, of course, there is a need for, I guess Mark also talked about it, it's a need for talking about best practices. There are examples, a few examples in the city of Vancouver even that they have used it, but it doesn't get profiled as much to increase the excitement and interest and maybe also show that it's possible even. And then the other thing that also, like a salvaging center, that's quite missing in Vancouver. We have a few smaller reuse centers, but they don't have the capacity to bring all of this wood and have it available. And lastly, one idea that came was that if we have some sort of stamp to showcase this wood is actually salvage, is from old growth forest, there might be more pride and interest in having them because it can easily be identified. And then, so I'm going to talk about when I finished my research, I realized city looked at it and they were like, okay, interesting. We have other goals. We want to be zero emission. So they moved on. But something that came recently, and it was quite exciting, is that they are expanding their green demolition bylaw. So in 2019, what they are going to do is they are going to expand it from pre-1940 to pre-1950 houses, and that moves from covering 40% of the houses in the region to covering about 70 or 75% of the houses in the region. They are going to mandate deconstruction for pre-1910 and also heritage. This is wrong. It's not heritage registered. It's character listed or heritage listed pre-1950 homes. So that amount is a very small quantity of homes. In city of Vancouver about 1,000 homes are demolished each year. That will count for 10 to 15 houses. But that's they know that they do it deliberately because they want to make sure that the market will grow and will create the capacity for it. And there are small contractors in the region that are very excited about this, and they're working hard to prove that's possible. There are many examples in Portland and East Coast Canada, so that's just going to be opening the door to the possibilities. And then they're going to provide funding and support the establishment of a non-governmental deconstruction hub. That center will basically collect this salvage wood, clean it, sort it, and make it ready for any building-related or non-building related use. And just to wrap up a little bit about the experience that happened at the city and what was found to be quite important in going to these paths, given that there's this two tension of affordability and moving fast in rezoning and building denser homes, and also the other group that are looking at the value of this. I mean, the heritage is not like 1,000 years old, but the forest is old and has the value for preserving. What I found to be key was that the alignment of all these different policies that they have had. So the heritage plan, the zero waste plan, the greenest city. So all of these, when they come together, that creates enough resources and staff to support it. There was also a strong support from the policymakers and the council, because everybody felt that pain every time one of these houses vanishes in the city. So they support the higher level and senior people also supported that initiative. And the fact that City always looked at the other areas in the region, so Portland, Seattle, we always reach out to them to see what they're doing and learning from their experiences and basically following the things that they have found successful or they don't recommend to be repeated. So learning from other regions is quite key, and that they are taking incremental steps. So they are taking it slow, but at the same time they make sure it's possible and it doesn't end with a unknown situation that they have to respond to all the voices that come criticizing that idea, and that they consult with the industry quite seriously. So they have workshops, they talk to the demolition contractors, what they care about, what works and doesn't work for them. So that makes it possible to not just surprise them with something that is coming up, and they're always quite clear about the future direction of the policy so that it gives the industry some time to adapt with it. And then the last one is having this support peer-to-peer knowledge transfer. So City is planning to do the case studies and publish them. There are a few the construction case studies and building of new homes with the constructed materials. And they are going to be documented to be shared with the industry, but also they're going to bring more experienced contractors to show and use that opportunity as a training for the local industry. And I think that is about it. Thank you.